Hi, this is Drew Tignanelli. This is our February update, and we wanted to try to keep you alert to what we're thinking on a month-to-month basis. And no, I don't have any good news, Tim.
Come on, Drew. There's got to be some good news here heading into the new year.
The good news, I guess, is that the United States is not headed into recession at this point in time.
Okay.
So that's the good news. But the bad news is that, you know, anybody who thinks that we're up and running again and that we've got a new bull market going, I think is kidding themselves.
Okay.
We don't have the mechanics for a new bull market at this point in time, at least from what I can see.
What holds us back?
Well, Europe is still a problem, and it's a big problem. And they haven't resolved their issue, even though things look a little better today than it did. And when you pump, what did they pump, $800 billion into their banks and so forth? That'll help make it. It's kind of like an alcoholic who's having problems, and you give him more alcohol, it'll look like he's doing better for a period of time. And that's what's happening in a lot of the world, the developed world, like Europe and the United States. We're using debt to cure a debt problem.
Okay.
And that's never a good thing. But in Europe, you have a lot of countries headed into recession, even depression. Greece is literally in a depression at this point in time. Italy and Spain are headed into recession. England is headed into recession. Ireland's headed into recession. And I think the next one you're going to hear about is Portugal. Portugal already was in the news a year or so ago, but you kind of haven't heard much about it lately. I think Portugal's going to rise up. You're going to start hearing a lot about Portugal now, just like you are hearing currently about Greece.
What is the size of their economy relative to Greece?
I think they're a little bigger than Greece, actually. Right? Not much, but a little bigger. Okay. So it's not it's not a huge economy that like Italy. If Italy went down, I think Italy's like the sixth or seventh largest in the world. Meaningful, very meaningful. Italy and Spain are the real, problem children in Europe. That if they went down in a big way, that would be serious issue. But Germany is pulling back. They're not headed into recession. France is in a lot worse shape than people realize. Also, I don't think people realize how bad economic shape France is in, and it's because of their banking system. Their banking system really is, historically it's a interesting banking system, and we don't have time to go into the whole history of the French banking system. But here in the United States, next year is when this health care bill kicks in. Right. And, our Medicare tax is going to double. So right now our Medicare tax is 2.4%, 2.9%. It's not going to double. It's going to go up by about 50%. It's going to go up to 3.8%. And you're going to start paying 3.8% on your unearned income if you make over $200,000 a year. Let's just use that as a good round number. Okay. Those are not going to be good. This whole health care bill has got a lot of provisions in it that's going to cause a lot of grief in the economy, and
not to mention confusion.
And confusion. I mean, gosh, just our little company trying to figure out the health care bill and what we can do and what we can't do. Right. I wish we had time to go into just explain some of the complication we've encountered. And we pay our 100% of our employees' medical insurance premium, but yet the way we do it, they say, is not fair. Believe it or not. I mean, I think it's fair. Well, go figure. So it's just amazing. But anyway, the United States has issues that it's going to have to deal with. Housing is not resolved yet. Not going to be resolved for another couple years. I'm expecting 2015 to be the start of a bull market in real estate. But it's not right now. And
I got a recent appraisal, and I know housing isn't working out exactly as I'd hope.
Well, and that's part of the problem is appraisers are really dictating market prices. Market prices are determined by what you're willing to pay for my house. Sure. But if an appraiser comes in and says, even though Tim Maurer wants to pay you $350,000 for your house, we think it's only worth $325,000, and now you're stuck. You either pay their price, or you come up with an extra $25,000 to buy my. And what happens is normally the seller has to drop his price to meet the appraiser,
right, especially in this market.
Even though you were willing to pay $350 if somebody would have lent you the money. And I know that makes it more conservative, but it doesn't do much for a real estate market to recover. So, and the other problem with the United States is that a lot of what you're seeing is, we had such a downturn in 08 and 09, and then you had such a mass infusion of money from the United States government, which also Europe did just recently too. They just threw $800 billion into their economy. They printed out of thin air, gave it to the banks, $800 billion. And that's making Europe feel a little better right now. The United States has done the same, but with the United States, you had so much restraint. People pulled back and said, okay, I can't buy a car right now. Okay, can't do this, can't do that. Now they're feeling a little better and they're saying, well, I got to buy that car now. And so you're seeing this pickup in demand, and people are saying, gosh, the economy's doing real well. Well, what's going to happen, in my opinion, is what you're going to see happen is all of a sudden you're going to hit this brick wall again, and I expect it to happen within the next 2 or 3 months, where all of a sudden the economy will seem like it's rolling over, going back into recession. And what's really happening is people have just slowed up again on their spending because they want to, they're implementing austerity of their own, and all of a sudden the U.S. economy will look like it's slowing down, and the market will react negatively to that. Also, in the emerging markets, they're not willing to yet let loose so that their economies really take off. They're still very concerned about inflation, and they're gonna wait a good bit before they really let loose with their money supply and so forth.
So what's going on in Asia, in China, in Japan? Are they making news these days?
Oh, they are. Their news isn't good, though, Their economies are slowing down. Everybody's excited that China is going to start to loosen up. But today they just came out and said, no, we're not going to loosen up that much at this point in time because we really don't have the economy under the control we ought to. And Japan just had their first trade deficit in like 30, 40 years. That's interesting when you consider that Japan is such a needy country. They're the highest debt to GDP country in the world.
Wow.
220 debt to GDP, whereas Greece is at 160 debt to GDP. So you'd say, well, why isn't Japan having bigger problems? Well, the reason is that they had such a trade surplus. They were making so much money from other countries, they didn't need to borrow from anybody else but themselves. Because they had all the money to do it that they were making in exports. Well, now that's disappearing, and as that disappears, they're going to become more needy on the rest of the world to supply, and that could be an interesting phenomena that will happen too. I think the good news, Tim, is that I think we're going to hit that bottom sometime in 2012 or 2013, and if we do, I think it will really be an exciting place to really buy. So for right now, I think people need to stay extremely conservative in their 401k, 403b accounts. And we're going to just try to stay in a conservative posture this year until we see things that we think are just compelling buys. Anyway, so that's our update for now. If you have any questions, please feel free to give us a call or write us an email. And for now, this is Drew Tignanelli saying God bless.